Hello, everyone. Welcome. Bonjour et bienvenue. Herzlich willkommen. Hola et buenos dias. Buongiorno. Bon dia. And hello. Welcome, everyone, to the Spiritual Awakenings International event for today. I just welcomed you in 7 different languages as a reflection of the fact that we truly are an international organization, and we have people from all over the world joining us today. We're currently in 49 different countries around the world. We keep on growing, so we're very, very excited about that. We would invite all of you to enter into the chat at some point where you are zooming in, where you are joining us from today, just so that we can know where everyone's from. I myself am zooming in from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and the Vice President of Spiritual Awakenings International, Robert Baer, who I'm about to introduce you to, is zooming in from Oregon in the United States. So welcome to everyone from all around the world. So I'm now going to turn it over to Robert Baer, the Vice President of Spiritual Awakenings International, who is going to be doing some opening remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Kaysen. I just wanted to thank everybody also for coming to today's live presentation. We are very grateful to have you here. Also, we had such a large sign up for this presentation. We had to expand our Zoom coverage, and we're also streaming live on Facebook. So please feel free to check us out on there also. A couple of housekeeping items. We have 4 members of our Circle of Honor here today. Of course, Dr. Bonnie Greenwell, our speaker, is one of those. Dr. Yvonne Kaysen, our president, is another one. And we have Dr. Francis Liu and Dr. Emma Bragdon here. And we want to thank them and acknowledge their Circle of Honor designation by us. One other thing, we are in 49 countries. We have 1,100 subscribers. We are growing every day. We're emerging. This has been a tremendous opportunity for us. And as Dr. Kaysen mentioned, if you'd like to put where you're from in the chat, we would love to see where everybody's from. So our secretary, Linda Truex, will moderate the question and answer period, which will happen after Dr. Greenwell is done with her talk, and she will stay around here for questions and answers. We're also up to 35 affiliated groups. If you are a person that's a member of an organization that may want to affiliate with us, please let us know. Please go to our website and fill out the necessary paperwork. We would love to have you. And I want to thank Jane DeForest and Hive Mind. They're also from the Pacific Northwest. They are co-sponsoring this event. And it's nice to have a fellow Oregonian here. So thanks, Jane. And I'm going to turn this back over to Yvonne Kaysen, Dr. Kaysen, who's going to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Robert. Yes, as Robert mentioned, Spiritual Awakenings International has a Circle of Honor, which I invite all of you to take a look at our SAI website. And what our Circle of Honor is, it's like our version of the Hall of Fame, where we recognize people who were groundbreakers and pioneers in raising awareness about spiritually transformative experiences and spiritual awakenings happening to people today. So today, it is my great privilege and honor to give a tribute to our speaker today, Dr. Bonnie Greenwell, in recognition of her induction into the Spiritual Awakenings International Circle of Honor, related to her pioneering and groundbreaking work relating to Kundalini awakening. So let me tell you a few things about Dr. Bonnie Greenwell. She is a transpersonal psychotherapist and a non-dual teacher in the lineage of Adyashanti. In 1990, she was the co-founder and then became the longtime director of the Kundalini Research Network. She has been a licensed counselor since 1980 in the state of California, and later and currently in the state of Oregon. She's also the past executive director of the Counseling Center of the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology. And her journey relating to Kundalini began when, after 6 years of Jungian analysis and 15 years of meditation in both the yogic and Zen tradition, she herself awakened the Kundalini energy while she was doing some breath work. Her experience was quite ecstatic, and it propelled her to learn more about it. And ultimately, she decided to do her doctoral, her PhD dissertation on Kundalini awakening at ITP. Her Kundalini studies took her all over, including travel to India. Over the years, she has talked with over a dozen gurus, including some in India, and she matriculated for a summer at the Carl Jung Institute in Switzerland. Since 1990, she's been offering lectures and trainings all around the world and has been interviewed numerous times on Kundalini awakening. She has published a total of 4 books on Kundalini awakening. Her first one in 1990, The Energies of Transformation, A Guide to the Kundalini Process, is considered a groundbreaking classic in the field. Since 2010, she established Shanti River Center in Ashland, Oregon. And I wish to acknowledge Dr. Bonnie Greenwell as a great pioneer in raising awareness about Kundalini awakenings. And I'd like all of you now to join me in a round of applause for Dr. Bonnie Greenwell to congratulate her on her induction into the SAI Circle of Honor. Congratulations, Bonnie.
Thank you, Yvonne. Are you ready for?
Yes, why don't you go right ahead?
Okay, that was a very, I appreciate your lovely and detailed introduction. It's strange to hear all of those things added up in one place. Well, hello, everyone. Today, what I'd like to do is offer you an overview of what can happen when Kundalini energy awakens, and to encourage you to welcome this experience as a transformative process that was meant to happen to you. Many people initiate this experience without expecting it and feel really alarmed by it and wonder, why did it happen to me? I end up thinking often that it's just our number is up, and it was your day, it was your moment, and there it is. It's really a process that is designed to change your understanding of consciousness and to bring you fully in alignment with your true nature. It's not just transformative, it's probably evolutionary. And a certain percentage of people, it's going to happen to every year. And probably this has been the true for a long time. Many people have had these awakenings. We've certainly seen evidence of it for hundreds of years in the scriptures. Kundalini is a Sanskrit word for the life force that all of us share. There's a life force, an energy of life, a consciousness and energy that moves into the fetus and helps this fetus to grow into a baby. And when the baby's fully formed, the excess energy coils at the base of the spine. And that excess energy of life is called Kundalini by the yogis, a word that means coiled. Kunda means coiled. This energy is carrying consciousness into our mind and into all of our senses. The yogis have called this living energy, the vital energy that we have, prana. It's also been called chi in China, and some Westerners have called it bioenergy. And there's probably other words for it in other cultures, but the core, the source of this energy is this primal Kundalini life force. Now, yoga has developed many practices for activating this coiled energy in order to change consciousness. Its whole purpose is to shift you out of your personal identity and into the recognition of yourself as what some might call spirit, we might call pure consciousness, we might call our natural state of being, that natural state that we entered into the world as. It seems also that in China, Qigong also can activate Kundalini, and that there's a whole system there for working with the life force. It's just not as spiritually focused as it is in the Indian model. And there's other practices in many traditions that also activate this life force and bring about changes in the people that are practicing. I'm going to talk about some of the different ways that I have seen this energy activate in people. There's kind of a classic model for it in India, but most of us Westerners are not following a classical model. We're having all kinds of spontaneous reasons why this energy is activating. And we don't have the discipline and the practice and the life commitment to a certain system that allows it to open in a really progressive and way that makes a lot of sense. It tends to be more random for most Westerners. But some of the things that activate Kundalini, of course, meditation, especially when it's very concentrated, that can activate a shift in consciousness. And sometimes after that shift in consciousness, the energy field begins to become active and Kundalini opens up. Meditation's a long classical method for spiritual awakening. And Kundalini is really the energetic complement to those shifts in consciousness. Really, if you're going to have this shift in consciousness, your whole energy has to get reorganized in such a way that you can embody the gifts of that consciousness shift. So that one often follows the other. Near-death experiences can start the energy moving. According to the yogis, when we die, this energy unravels from its source and lifts up and leaves the body. So it makes a lot of sense if you've had a near-death experience that your energy would be preparing to release. You all know that when somebody's passed away, there's no energy and there's no consciousness. They've gone. But when you've had an NDE, that energy started to do that transition, but it didn't complete it, or it returned back in and reconnected in some way. But it often leaves people with all the patterns and conditions that follow a Kundalini awakening, because it won't go back and lock into the kind of stability it had before. Psychedelic use, shamanic practices that use ayahuasca, things like that. Many people have called me, have had an activation of energy during those sessions or afterwards. Also, I believe that psychedelic use can cause an energetic shift. Maybe the Kundalini doesn't open right then, but it can open later when you've gone home and you think that the process has kind of been finished, but it may have started this restructuring, this reconstruction of the body energy because of that shift in consciousness that you had. Again, these are not things that happen to everybody, but a certain percentage of people it's going to happen to. Other factors that can activate Kundalini is great shock or grief or even intense sex, particularly if you're with a partner that has an activated energy field. And one of the classic ways that Kundalini opens is through great devotion. So sometimes people who've been in spiritual traditions that really have no orientation at all to Kundalini, but are very devoted and very heartfelt, will have an activation of the energy. Transmission or Shaktipat is a common way for this energy to begin stirring. Shaktipat is an encounter with a teacher or a guru who gives you what's called a transmission, or you sense a vibration, or your body unconsciously resonates with that person's vibration, and that activates the energy. Many people who have spent time in ashrams or with gurus will feel this energy while they're with the teacher, and then it sort of fades away when they go home. So it's as if their body can resonate, because every body has the same energy, but they maybe haven't gone deeply enough in their practices or their devotion to have a full-on activation yet. So they become kind of attached to the teacher because they feel the vibration and sometimes even the bliss when they're around that person. But ultimately, what's going to need to happen for them is for the whole energy field to open up within them if they're going to become spiritually awakened or self-realized or know their true nature, whatever we want to call this transition. So I've heard thousands of, I just also want to mention breath work. I would say, as Yvonne mentioned, I'd had many years of meditation experience, and I'd had some nice openings, expansive openings during that time. But I didn't really activate Kundalini until I started to do energy work and breath work when I was a student at ITP. And breath work, if you think about it in yoga, breathing practices are a significant aspect of activating Kundalini, and breath work or other practices that involve heavy breathing of some sort can also stir the energy and open it up. And that's what happened for me. It kicked in and like a little bit after my session. I was sitting in a class and my whole energy just started going up and up and up, getting a little bit higher each time. Fortunately, I had a clue what it was. I had learned enough by then to not be frightened, and just simply took the time to go sit and meditate and be present with it. And had a primarily over many months, a really extraordinary and wonderful experience with the energy, which, as Yvonne also mentioned, led me to write a dissertation on that topic. I became very curious about why is it, this was quite a few years ago, this was more than 35 years ago. There was hardly anything written in English on this topic. I don't know, there wasn't much in Sanskrit either, except in the scriptures. And so I wanted to understand why some people would have a really positive experience and others seem to have so much difficulty with it. And in the environment I was in at the time, it wasn't difficult to find other people who'd had energy activations. So I used that as the basis along with my research for my doctoral work. And I didn't expect it to lead me into the career it did. So I'll just point out now that if you have a Kundalini awakening, it's likely to shift your whole life into a direction you never expected and just carry you there. And certainly that's what happened for me. It's led me into this amazing work and meeting all these amazing people over the years. So yoga, of course, has a lot of specific practices that involve concentration, breath retention, sense pulling on all the senses, meditation that are designed specifically to awaken Kundalini. But not all yoga systems really understand all the phenomena that's related to it. And especially if you're somebody that's opened it without having a lifelong commitment to yoga, the lifestyle of yoga, the diet, the discipline, you're not likely to follow the traditional patterns. So sometimes it's very difficult to find a teacher who understands why you're having psychological or emotional issues or too much heat or all kinds of other phenomena, because in their particular model, it's likely not to be such a difficult process, theoretically, although sometimes that there are exceptions. Classically, Kundalini is said to be based at the base of the spine, and it's said to open from the base of the spine. But some people have even reported feeling it starting with their feet or their big toe, There's even things in the scriptures about the toenail falling off, or the toe turning black. So for some reason, there's an entry point there at the feet for a few people. There's also awakenings that begin with the heart chakra. And in some systems, they label that a Kundalini opening too. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. I don't think of it as a Kundalini opening, but so much as a heart opening that triggers the Kundalini process. Sometimes people will report a downward flow of energy. They might think of it as a descent of grace, or a moment perhaps in grief where they felt a downward flow of energy that was comforting in some way and just completely transformed their emotional state at the time. And this can trigger the activation of Kundalini later at that time, or later from the base of the spine. I don't think of it quite as a Kundalini process. There's one school of yoga that focuses entirely on encouraging this downward flow of energy, and that's the Aurobindo school. Aurobindo was an Indian mystic who was a contemporary of Ramana Maharshi's, or of Gandhi's actually, and built, well, there's a whole city in India that was built based on his model and teachings. And he wrote almost an encyclopedia about spiritual processes. That was part of my early research. So the techniques in most yoga practices are designed to stimulate the base of the spine. And those are the typical yoga practices, but meditation and devotional practices tend to concentrate either on the heart or the third eye. The third eye is also called the sixth chakra, Ajna chakra. I've explored Ramana Maharshi's teachings quite a bit. I highly recommend him if you want a really core understanding of the depth of Advaita Vedanta, or non-dual awakening. Ramana calls the heart center the seat of consciousness, or the seat of the thought of I. And so his perspective is that when the heart opens, and he calls this seat, it's not the physical heart, but it's on the right side of the heart. He's called it the cave of the heart. And he says that that feeling we all have of being I is that's a good place to start looking for that sense, that felt sense of I. And that when that I is realized, that I in a way is the link between the original pure consciousness, the self, which he has called the self, or we could call it the true nature, and the human. Because when that I becomes active in our bodies, then it identifies with all the things that happen to us. It creates our personal sense of I. So we think, well, I'm female, I'm this age, I'm in this family, I'm in this culture, this is who I am, this is what I believe. But he says the key to self-realization is to go beyond all of those conditions and labels that we put on top of the I, and go down to this core felt sense of what is this I? Where does it come from? Because it's directly connected to the truth, to the deeper truth of our nature. So if somebody has even a glimpse of that experience, particularly, it's kind of an experience of losing your sense of self, which can be very frightening if you're not knowing what it's all about. And if they have that glimpse through some shock, or maybe a near-death experience, or some other event, the fact that that consciousness has made that shift is likely to trigger a Kundalini activation at some point afterwards. Think about your body as an energy grid. It's got, according to the yogis, and I refer to the yogic model primarily because it's the most comprehensive that I've ever come across. It has details explaining everything, perspective of everything related to how this works. And other systems that are either not so available or not so detailed as far as I can tell. Qigong is another model, but it's one that I'm not as familiar with. But think of yourself as having this energy grid with the central channel called Sushumna and 72,000 lines of energy flow that come out in all directions. There's beginning with the chakra areas. You probably have all heard of the 7 chakras. Some people say there's 6, and that these energy grid spreads out 72,000 lines throughout the body. And it's carrying consciousness throughout your body. The center of the grid is Sushumna, associated with the spine. And Ramana says that energy primarily is moving from the heart into the mind, which is why we're able to think. It's like the fuel that fuels our ability to think and to move and to feel our senses, to feel taste and touch and vision. So it's primarily working through those channels, this natural energy, this pranic field. There's actually 5 pranas, and I'm not going to get into all the complexity of that, but Ramana likes to focus on this one field of energy. And without, if you think about it, without your consciousness and without your energy, your body's not alive, is it? It's inert. If you've ever been with somebody that's passing, you can almost see those things passing away. So you can think of yourself as being consciousness and energy inhabiting this material form. And spiritual awakening is really about the true recognition of that not just knowing it, but internally experiencing the recognition of yourself as this pure consciousness that has been flowing through the energy. But the energy calms down a great deal once somebody has a great realization of themselves as consciousness. So because of this energy and consciousness, that's why we can think and move and function in the world. And again, this basic life flow has been called prana, chi, bioenergy, and probably many other names. So you're familiar, I'm sure, with the idea of the chakras. Think of them like vortices where energy and consciousness collect and then send information back and forth along the lines of energy, which the word for that in Sanskrit is nadis. These energy flows are called nadis. And they're not physical. You're not going to see them in a screen. They are energy flows. It seems that to many people, when Kundalini awakens through this energy field, it's almost like your body's gone from 110 to 220 wiring. It's like everything has enhanced itself. And of course, that creates a lot of phenomena and a lot of challenges in adjusting. All of us have contractions in our energy field and in the chakra areas. There's no way to not have those. It's as if everything that's happened to us gets stored in that energy. Think of this like your programming, like computer programming, perhaps. You have learned to be who you are. You have collected beliefs. You've had emotional experiences that have left scars. You've had experiences that have taught you to be afraid or be cautious. You didn't come into the world that way. You may have had a little more aggravated energy system when you came in or something, but maybe depending on what was going on in the womb. But you didn't come in with basic fear. If you look at a newborn baby, as long as they're being met with love, they're pretty happy, unless their body's gotten uncomfortable. And they're not, you can always see little tiny children, 3-4 months old, they're just full of light and presence and eagerness to be seen. And that's the kind of, in many ways, the natural state. So you've got scars, you've got emotional scars that have created your contractions. You've also discovered that you had a self-will and drive. And so that's motivated you, that's pushed you through life. And you've formed a whole belief system about who you are based on somebody else labeled you, gave you a name. somebody else told you what race you were, what family name, what culture you belong to, what nation, how you should behave, how people in our system are. And you've, at some unconscious level, sometimes quite consciously, you've collected all of that data and you think, I'm this. This is, of course, this is who I am. And that's natural. That's the way humans are designed. It's not a mistake. It's just the way that the universal field can have the play of variety and human interaction. And so here we are. But the problem is, because we get so contained in our own identity, we feel separate. We feel we have issues arise because of that separateness. And we don't recognize our universal oneness. So you may have learned to be cautious, and you may have formed an identity. This is your ego structure. It's not bad. It's not something to be condemned. It's just something that we wear. It's just something to not be so attached to begin to see that it maybe, just maybe, it's not who you are. And if you actually had an NDE or some other experience that really took you out of your body, you probably had that insight. You could say, well, wait a minute, maybe I'm not my body, which is a very significant understanding that can come in an awakening process. So you have an identity and you have this ego structure. And as I said, it's unique and it's natural in every human. So one of the reasons that a Kundalini experience is so challenging is that all of these patterns and beliefs are being threatened. The consciousness and energy is moving through your chakras, and each of the chakra areas holds different aspects of identity. And so they're uprooting positions that have been associated with that area. So you might feel blocks, you might feel heat, you might have shaking or jerking or even pain in some areas. You might have sudden emotional upheavals. You don't even know why they're there. And you can have changes in perception where suddenly a belief system or a way of seeing things falls away and you have a whole different way of being with that part of your perception and that location in your body, depending on where the energy is moving. I've really come to see this as primarily a deconstruction process, that your old identifications, your old programming is being deconstructed. And of course that's threatening. And depending on how identified you have been, it can be very, very difficult. If you've had a lot of trauma, it can be especially difficult because it's kind of a protective identity. And this feels very much like an invasion, like things are being taken away that you need. So there's a lot of people who feel unstable, disoriented, frightened, particularly with the first opening at the base. That's our stability in life. Suddenly that's destabilizing. We might not feel so solid in our bodies anymore. When the energy moves into the second chakra, which is located near the sexual organs, you can feel overwhelmed sexually. You can have so much energy, you don't know what to do with it. You can also, unfortunately, have the unleashing or arising of the memory of old and difficult sexual experiences, particularly traumatic events as a child. And they may have been repressed. You might not have had any memory because you were so young, but you have this sensation. And so when the energy is stuck in the second chakra, it can be a very difficult time, and until you find a way to get some help to work through that old conditioned experience. When in the third chakra holds our sense of self, our ability to move forward in the world, our identifications of this, what I can do, this I'm going to hold back on, this is what I am. And Many people have great difficulty when the energy's in their third chakra, might have even physical problems, digestive issues, knots in their belly, because the body's programmed, it doesn't want to let go of that drive and that sense of self, or even if the identity is wounded, even if there's a sense of, I'm someone that has to hold back, I can't go forward, I have to take care and protect myself, even that's going to be threatened, because neither is true. You are free to move how you are inspired, so to speak, from that true nature, but it's been locked up and blocked ever since whatever trauma might have caused that contraction. So that's what the energy is trying to do. It's trying to, let's release all the trauma. Let's release whatever is stuck in this part of our body. Also, once the third chakra is more open, many people say that their drive falls away. And that's very distressing for people who've had a fast track career of some sort, a great passion they're following. Actually, if it's a great passion, it might not be as problematic. The problem is that many of us are living lives that are not in line with our truth. We're doing lifestyles that really are not authentic for us. And anything that's not authentic in your life is going to be challenged greatly in this process. It's like requiring you to become aligned with what's really authentic movement and expression in the world for you. And it can take quite a while. You need to be very compassionate with your human self. It can take quite a while to get realigned and find out, well, what's really right for me, and what's the rhythm that's right, and what's the work that's right, and how do I live really congruently. It can take a while to get adapted to these changes because of our conditioning, our conditioned patterning. So you begin to see areas of your life that are dysfunctional or toxic or out of alignment with your truth. And very often you have to make changes. This is why a lot of times people will say their whole life fell apart because somehow whatever direction they were going, that karmic line is finished, and it's time to get realigned. But there's an idea that at the third chakra, as the energy moves from the third to the fourth chakra, that's a significant shifting place in our being, and moves us from being fully grounded in the human and material world and finally into a spiritual experience of life. And so many people have talked about block or a knot in the between the third and fourth chakra in the belly. However, Ramana has another perspective too that I think is interesting. He points out from his own experience and from scriptural references that there's a knot between the third chakra and the heart that has to be broken for true liberation to happen. That this is the knot that holds consciousness to the body identification. And until that breaks, one doesn't have the experience yet of liberation until they recognize fully they're not their body. This knot, I have found, it doesn't open readily or often until a lot of other work has been done. So more frequently, energy moves up into the heart, or the heart opening happens. Again, I want to point out that none of these things are really happening in progression. I'm describing them in progression, but you can have a chakra active in any area at any time. You can have it partially active and then it shuts. That work is done for a while, it moves to another area. It isn't as if you're going to have this progressive, nice, understandable, predictable process. So when the heart begins to open, though, it's an interesting process, and it's an important process for all of us. There's no, every spiritual tradition that I've come across has at least one practice for opening the heart. And people who have developed body therapies say that we're very armored around our heart. And it makes a lot of sense. I can say that was very true for me. I was aware my mother died suddenly when I was 14, and I just went into contraction. I was closed down greatly for the next 10 years until I started doing psychological work and spiritual work. And it shut me off from being very loving, and it shut me off from God, from feeling connected to the divine. And when somebody pointed that out to me and told me to start to meditate if I wanted to fix that, it changed my life. It was kind of the beginning of my own spiritual journey. But even after all the spiritual experiences I've had and the Kundalini awakening and everything else, I still knew that I had more contraction around the heart. And it wasn't until I met a teacher who was very significant for me, who I could see clearly through him that I and he were the same, that my heart opened up. And when the heart opens up, what happens is there's a different kind of experience of love. It's not the kind of love that you go and get clingy and attached to something. It's more of an interior love that just feels at peace. It's like love is part of this core source of energy that we are. And it's like the heart cracks open. For many people, it's grief that cracks the heart open. It's loss of some sort. So the opening of the heart is not an easy thing, because we've got these protective conditioning around it, because we don't want to feel vulnerable after we've had a loss or a grief, or somebody we care about has gone. So we just unconsciously create these defenses that keep us from having an open heart chakra. So where to go next? I think that as infants, we come into the world wide open, really available for love. And every time it isn't met, which is human, humans are not able to be that present usually. I certainly wasn't as a young mother, to be completely available to this receptivity, to this love. The infant contracts a little bit. I've seen it literally happen. I've seen little 2-year-olds reaching out for a parent who's distracted, and just great disappointment when they can't get their attention. And I'm not saying that you ought to be giving your child all that attention. I'm just saying that naturally, as humans, the design seems to be that we get more closed down. And the more good experiences we have, the more open we get, and the more challenging experiences in our early life, the more contracted we're likely to be with the heart chakra. Some of the practices for opening the heart that I'm aware of in various traditions are chanting or mantra. Bhakti yoga is completely the yoga of devotion, and that's all about opening the heart through sound, through chanting, through meditation. In Buddhism, there's a lot of time that's spent on meditating on compassion, and that is simply for opening the heart. I believe that the Sufis are focused almost entirely on love, and their turning practice opens the body and opens the heart. And of course, in the Christian tradition, devotion to Jesus is very significant. Many Christians who have spontaneous awakenings do so through devotion. They're surprised. I had one woman tell me that she was, I don't remember what religion she was, but she was Christian, and she was kind of psychic, and she was teaching meditation to children who were retarded. And she was so touched by their devotion that she became devotional, and that wakened up her energy. So this is a long classic approach to spiritual awakening. Now, I'm going to refer to Ramana again, because his whole practice of self-inquiry is about focusing on the area of the heart, not the heart chakra so much as this cave of the heart that I talked about a little earlier. And he says that if you're going to live from an awakened place, this area has to become awake. But once consciousness wakes up in that area, consciousness is everywhere. So it's no longer self-identified with a part of the body, but it's more that there is nothing but consciousness, according to the mystics and their experience. So I'll talk now a minute about the fifth chakra. That's the throat area. This area is associated with our expression and our creativity. And this is another area that's very often blocked, probably because we've been trained to hold back, to not say our truth. It might not have been real safe in our family. And certainly in school, we're not even supposed to talk for hours at a time. And when we do, it has to be a thought that matches something intellectual the teachers taught us. It can't be a feeling or your own interpretation, usually. So we've been trained not to be very expressive. And some people break through that barrier and are very expressive, but most of us have blocks in our throat chakra. Many people who have awakenings of Kundalini describe problems with their throat. And some of the things that you can do to loosen that up a bit is to open your jaw, release your neck, do deep breathing down into the belly, express yourself, what you know. If you're not going to say it, draw it, paint it, write it, get it out of your body, make sounds. Some people end up making really strange sounds spontaneously in this process. You might wake up in the middle of the night growling or roaring or some odd thing like that. It's like the energy itself tries to open up these chakras. It's an important channel to loosen up if you're going to bring your authentic self forward in the world without holding back. I think one of the greatest gifts is when you reach the point that you don't care anymore what people think. I think that that's very significant in your freedom of expression. I have had several singers call me. As I might have mentioned, I've talked to thousands of people over the last 35 years, done assessments with them. So some of them have been professional singers, and they likely awakened because their throat was so open. So as you know, also in devotional practices like chanting, that's another methodology for opening up and awakening. There's also a yoga of sound called Shabda Yoga that uses sound primarily to awaken consciousness. So again, I want to mention I'm talking of the chakras progressively, but various chakras can be more open in some people than others, like my singers. They might have had a real open throat chakra, might have been very closed up from the waist down. Some people have very open hearts. They're just express love and compassion easily and naturally, and other chakras are closed off. So as I said, this can start anywhere. It can, but of course, if it's called Kundalini, there's going to be that initial rising from the base. And the rising from the base is described as it can be slow and gradual over time. So you may have felt stirrings when you meditated and gradually felt it. It can happen in a moderate way where there's kind of almost leaps from one chakra to another at different times. And it can help happen like a geyser, like you just, all of a sudden there's this geyser of energy and you nearly pass out. And I know one teacher told me he felt like he was going to be killed, that it was just going to kill him. And he just let go and said, all right, if that's what's going to happen, I'll go with it. There's no predictability in just exactly how this energy will open, or where, or whether how far up it will go, or how far it will stay, or how long it will take for all this clearing out to do. I believe that factors like your lifestyle, your history, your conditioning, your belief system, your personality type, your diet, all these things can have a factor in what happens, where the energy works. If you've had injuries or surgery, sometimes the energy seems to go to certain areas to try to heal it. Other times it seems more blocked because there's scar tissue or something, or a metal plate of some kind in your body.
You'll have to unmute, Bonnie. We seem to have lost your sound. There you go.
Did you catch my last sentence?
If you could repeat it, please.
I'm not sure I can.
I think it cut off at about the plate in the body.
Okay. I just said I've talked with people who've had all of these kinds of difficulties. And okay, let me drop down to my notes a minute. Let's talk about the third eye for a moment. The fifth chakra, the sixth chakra. There are specific experiences that have been mentioned in spiritual literature about experiences that are relevant to the third eye. This includes experiences of light, and also psychic openings, seeing visions, although sometimes people see visions when the heart chakra is opened. And also psychic abilities can be inborn. Some people it seems hereditary, but generally psychic gifts are associated with the fifth and the sixth chakra opening up. Yogis believe that there are brain centers that are dormant in all of us, which goes along with the idea that we use such a small percentage of our brain, which brain research suggests. And they believe that there's a center that kind of holds this potentiality for psychic stuff, and also for visionary. Some people tend to have visions and others don't. That could be related to a brain center. The same is true if a healing ability suddenly arises. Again, these don't happen for everybody, but they happen for a small percentage of people. But it could be, according to the yogis, the activation of the energy hitting a certain brain center that brings that city, they call those cities, up. Most classical systems will say do not get attached to any of these cities, that it will keep you from going all the way to self-realization. It'll be a distraction. It's just another distraction like any other in life. And if the gift is meant to be used somehow later on down the line, it'll come up spontaneously. But to not get, if your goal is self-realization or enlightenment, whatever you want to call it, don't get attached to the cities. Oftentimes people have glimpses, not just of these lights, and sometimes formulas even, and sometimes they hear Sanskrit music, or they'll hear a voice that gives them some guidance, or they might say, I had an experience once, I was worried about, the only time I ever got nervous or scared about my own process was when I read Gopi Krishna's book. He had so many difficulties. I told my husband, if I suddenly fall apart, call this, I gave him the names of a couple of people to call who I thought would understand somewhat, because I was afraid I might suddenly be in the kind of condition he was. And so one night I woke up in the middle of the night and I heard a voice, and I thought, well, maybe I'm not experiencing Kundalini because it's not that bad. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I heard a voice, and it said, this is really Kundalini. We're just taking it easy on you. I had no idea what that was. I can't define it. I'm not even trying to, but it's just an example. People will sometimes hear a voice say, peace be with you, or do this, try this, lean in, do a little yoga, something like that. And I've had just only 2 or 3 other experiences like that. Mostly once in a cave in India when I was deeply in meditation. So it's not a sign of mental illness. It's just an activation of something that we don't really, then we're not going to be able to lock a label onto it, and we don't need to. But, as long as it's not causing you harm or suggesting harm in any way, don't worry about it. Just see what it is that it's trying to say to support you. People frequently have glimpses of awakened consciousness, especially when energy kind of goes into the crown. In some systems, the Sahasrara is considered the seventh chakra at the top of the head. In others, it's considered symbolic of the 10,000s of realizations that one might have. It's like the doorway into the truth of consciousness, which has no boundary, which has no identification. It's just everywhere. And so people might experience momentarily for a few minutes, sometimes even a few days or weeks, this gift of feeling completely connected with the universal consciousness or light, or being in the perfect flow. Everything works just perfectly. And or they may just experience it in an uncomfortable way, as feeling like they're out of their body and they better hurry up and get back in. That what's happened, some people have these spontaneous moments like that are not spiritually oriented, and think that they've lost their mind, because in that moment you're not oriented to your personal self. You've let go of the personal identification. This is very frightening. If you've never experienced it, you have no idea what it means, and you're not in a spiritual path. So these are all glimpses. They don't mean you're enlightened. They just mean you're being told of the potentialities of consciousness. I like to think of it that way, that you're beginning to see that consciousness is not as bounded within you as you thought it was. You're getting hints of what you are. But then what happens, and I have to say, one of the most common things that students bring to spiritual teachers is, I've got it and I've lost it. But the fact is that that's the way it's supposed to work. You have these glimpses, you have these moments of feeling free, and then the energy goes back in to do more clearing out work. It's as if everything we've ever been attached to has to be released, so before we can embody what we've experienced and really be at peace with it. And that being at peace means it's kind of the end of fear of life and fear of death. It's kind of the end of struggle. It's definitely the end of spiritual seeking. And it's more as if there's just a part of you that always feels it's all okay, even when it's not. That you can hold in a much less reactive way whatever is going on. That doesn't mean the human part of you doesn't get excited once in a while and react, but this other part is there saying, yeah, but the truth is the universe is okay. It's whatever arises, it's going to be okay. And that's not the logic of the mind at all. The mind's job is to divide everything up. What's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong? Am I doing this okay? Am I not? And that's just the way brains work. Nothing wrong with that. It makes us human. But realization brings you to a different level of perception that has a lot of compassion for that humanness, but isn't identified with it. It may still show up sometimes, but it's more irrelevant. It becomes more like an understanding of, yeah, that's the way we humans are, rather than a great anxiety about it, or great resistance, or great rejection. That's why I think usually when you've had these insights of your own shadow, and you've worked out your own stuff, and you've reached this kind of understanding inside of yourself, you can be a little more understanding of the foibles of other humans. you're not quite as reactive when you see that most people are just coming from pain, and that's why they do the things they do, and that it's unfortunate that we do those things to one another. But right now, it's the state of the human. It's just the state of the human condition. I like to think that we're just an immature species. We haven't really fully developed yet, and that hopefully, if we can continue to evolve, we'll reach a more centered and compassionate and easygoing place in the collective. So I may be raising more questions than offering solutions here. I'm going to share a little bit about what makes this awakening process more smooth and helps it move into liberation or into the true knowledge of what you are. And then I'll open up for questions. So I think the first step is to release fear, to be willing to be curious and open instead of fearful and contracted. And this is really hard because we have no context in our culture for these kinds of experiences. And you may be having radical experiences. You may be waking up in the middle of the night doing yoga postures. You may be feeling heat rise, or your body may be shaking a lot. So nobody can explain that to you. The doctor says nothing's wrong. It must be a somatic illness. And so it's natural to feel afraid. The more you can learn that will help you feel trust and relax, the easier the energy movements will become. And the less fear you have and the more curiosity, because very strange things happen. Just be curious. Oh, I didn't know this could happen. Well, so what? There it is. It will pass. Almost all this stuff passes. It's not a permanent condition. The next step is to try to find some true teachers or some scriptures that inspire you and help you feel more comfortable with the changes you are going through. When I started this work, there was no internet. Yvonne and I, we started the Kundalini Network. We had to do it all by phone and letter. There was no way of finding out who was out there. I would go to bookstores and look for books by people who mentioned the word Kundalini and call them and try to bring them together. I imagine that's how I found Yvonne. It's not it wasn't an easy task, but nowadays there's a lot on the web and a lot of it's not very good for you, but some of it is. So you need to have discrimination and really look for places where they ring with truth, for people that ring with truth for you. And I have found the Indian scriptures very comforting. Just go to a spiritual bookstore and see what books fall in your lap, what titles touch you, thumb through them, find what really says, I want more of this, I need more of this. Learn, become educated about this process, and don't listen to people that call it dangerous and are fear-based. Another thing you can do is make a real commitment to facing whatever comes up and meeting it fully so that its impact on you can dissipate. This, if you've had a lot of therapy, it's very helpful because you've learned some tools for meeting your shadow stuff and your uncomfortable stuff. If you haven't, and especially if you've had trauma, you may need to get some therapy before you go on with whatever practices you're doing. The therapist doesn't really have to understand Kundalini, but they do have to understand how we untangle ourselves from the impacts of trauma. And there's nothing better you can do for yourself than find somebody that can support you in doing that. You want to honor your humanness and heal as much of it as you can consciously. It can be very helpful to journal or to draw or dance or move when you've got excess energy in your body, or you're in a mood, you're feeling an energy of depression. Very often we're picking up energies that don't even belong to us, We go in a big box store, we come out loaded with somebody else's depression or anger. So you want to just dance, move, breathe, find your own way of releasing energy that doesn't belong to you or that's weighting you down, that's difficult. Sometimes in this process, some of you will even find it's like you're carrying an energy that belongs to the collective. Might be an energy of pain right now, with so many people are in grief and so many have suffered because of the COVID issue. So, you know, it's like you don't have to carry that all inside of you. Give it up to the universe. Find a way to move it out of your own body so that you're not totally weighted down by it. If you can trust that you're in a transformative process and that you were called to it, it's not an accident. You may have even been asking for it. You just didn't realize what it was going to entail. You may have been somebody all your life wanted to know God or wanted to know truth, and now you've been stuck in this self-revealing and deconstruction process that you had no idea that's what was going to happen. But trust it. Trust it's come for a reason. It's good for you. It's going to help you get free, even if it isn't what you had expected. If you did have an NDE or some other shock that triggered this, you probably need a lot more education about spiritual awakening and a new orientation related to your intention in life. It's really hard to just say, I'm going to make this go away. You almost have to completely reorient your life and think about what's really important for you. That doesn't mean that you don't take care of your immediate, I like to think of it, if it's on my doorstep, it belongs to me. And that certainly includes your children. And if you have a need to self-support, you've got to find a way to do that. So it doesn't mean you walk away from any responsibility, but you can carry it much more lightly by coming from your true nature more than from the mind down. It's very helpful to bring awareness down below your neck and not, most of us, we're thinking all the time right now, you're listening, so you've got all this energy up in your head. If you took that energy and you brought it down, 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 down into the heart, into the belly, as if I had an analyst once, he used to say he thought with his belly. I thought, well, that's an interesting way to walk around, to move from the heart, from the center, to put your center of consciousness below the neck can be very helpful, especially if you have a mind that is problematic in any way, overloading you with worries and things like that. If you are in a spiritual community, your teacher might or might not understand. If they've been through this, of course, themselves, they're likely to have some support, but otherwise they're very unlikely to be supportive, especially of the emotional stuff that might come up, or spontaneous sounds that disturb a Zen session, things like that. So you might really need to get open to looking outside of your immediate community for the support you need. Listen to your body. Listen to your body and ask yourself what you need. Calm changes in diet. Very often people have spontaneous knowing, I can't eat this anymore, can't use alcohol anymore, and it just drops away. Do you need changes in your environment? Do you need to be more in nature? Nature is a very nurturing aspect of this process. The pace at which you live your life, practices are needed for calming your mind. You may need more free time. So you really have to sit down and really listen and ask yourself, what's the right pace for me at this time? What is it I need next? If you have a lot of energy releasing, lay down on your bed and let it release. Just say, okay, energy, just do what you need to do. Let your body shake or go into asana or vibrate or whatever it wants to do. Usually won't be there that way for a long time, and it will settle down after a while. Or you can dance it out or try yoga or qigong to get more in touch with your energy flow. If you find you're doing practices like that and it raises too much energy, you're uncomfortable, don't do it. Cut back on the practices. If you are doing such practices, get your teacher to show you how do you ground. Focus a lot on grounding. In every system has grounding practices, or go out and lay on the earth. So it's just really important to become connected to your body, and to also notice a lot of people, their sensitivity rises greatly. So you want to notice, where do I go that I feel overwhelmed? It's too sensitive. I can't do that anymore, at least right now. Where can I go where my energy feels like it's being calmed, it's being nurtured? Find those spots for yourself. Create them in your home or your yard if you can, or find a place in a park or museum or a temple that you go and it just goes, whew, you can just feel, oh, this is here. I can just be present with this. If you're somebody, and I'm not saying all of you should be doing this, but if you're seeking enlightenment, I love the practice that's taught by Ramana Maharshi, focusing on awareness of this thought of I before there's any content associated to it. I think that deep, consistent meditation, consistently going back to that deep stillness, is the tried and true method for self-realization. I also think if you can't sit a lot, you can walk and just practice presence, practice the awareness of being here now. Very often when we're out walking in the park or on the beach, we're thinking about something else. We're making a laundry list of things to do later in the day, or we're worrying about a conversation we had with someone. Instead, just practice presence. Drop down and below the net and just, what's here? There's a tree, there's a flower. What does the grass feel like? How does it feel if I walk on the sand barefoot? Practice presence. That's another form of meditation that can be very nurturing for you. And trust, you're in this energy process. It's there for a reason. This is its ultimate goal. It's not that everybody gets there, but people get to many different stages of feeling content with their life before they ever reach this enlightenment stage. So welcome the process you're in. But don't push it. Don't take charge of it. You're meeting it. You want to create a creative and cooperative relationship with your energy. It's your own life force. Your mind is not smart enough to control it. It knows more than you do. It brought you into life. You want to listen to it. You want to tune into it. You want to do what you need to calm yourself and be in right relationship. Even if you're capable of falling in love with it, it will help you beyond words. And when you do relax fully into it, it can become so blissful that you feel extremely at peace with being in this process. And that can be a great move forward. I sometimes think when we go into bliss, our consciousness may be falling into the cells of our body, which we know are mostly space, that we're just tuning into ourselves as space, as silence, as nothing in a sense, but it's a nothing that's extremely rich with potential. So this energy, it's your connection between pure consciousness and body identification. And to break that identification, that's called the short path or the direct path to enlightenment. All the other things, the classical methodologies, are gradual paths. And those are good paths too. And most people are on one for a while and another, and they don't always stay on one or the other. But this has been called the direct path, this sudden breaking of this identification. So I'm going to suggest, if you've had already some major realization of consciousness, you might check out Adyashanti's book, The End of Your World, which kind of describes the end of your world. that will help you learn what needs to happen in order to hold on to this shift and move forward in your life from a new place of reference. And my books have been very supportive, I'm told, for many people on the path. The most current available ones are the Kundalini Guide and the Awakening Guide. And my more recent book is called When Spirit Leaps, Navigating the Process of Spiritual Awakening. My books are all on Amazon, and When Spirit Leaps should be available in bookstores too, because it was published by New Harbinger Press. I have 2 websites that have good information, also called awakeningguide.com and kundaliniguide.com. Ordinarily, those are good ways to contact me directly, but I am going to be taking a leave for a few months here because of a medical issue I need to deal with. So I won't be doing any assessments probably for a few months. But I also have been putting out a newsletter recently called Awakened Living at substack.com. It's free to subscribe. And there's a lot of back issues. I've put out 10 issues now. I put it out every 2 weeks, which I may be able to continue, I'm not sure. And it's worth looking at the back issues if you want resources, because I've included various resources in each issue that are helpful to people in spiritual awakening. Also, there's some essays, and there's a different book review in each issue. So that would give you some reading material if you're looking for more background information for this process. So I'd love to see you join my newsletter. I have a Facebook page called Shanti River Center that is just for people that interested in my work. Don't post on Facebook very often, but if you want to follow me there, you should do that rather than my name, which is more oriented toward my kids and my family. So that's Shanti River Center, which was the name of my center in Ashland. So I'd like to open it up now for questions, and I know they're going to be given to me by
Linda.
Okay, so I see them, but instead of my going through them, she's going to tell me what she'd like me to talk about next.
Right, and there might be some people that have questions in mind and they haven't entered them, so I just wanted to give a brief overview and let you know that we are definitely international. This is being attended by people from Holland, Canada, Poland, the United Nations, Paris, France, and of course, many states within the United States. So I well attended. With the high count I had was 82 people with us today. All right, so we had where people were from. Some people just posted comments to be shared with everybody else. I'm going to try to focus on those entries that are a question to Bonnie. So I had one here from Kathy Kelly. What is the mystical experience for personality? Is it a spirit guide? I, or my consciousness, left my body spontaneously and met with an Hopi in the Red Desert. A few weeks, I want to say there's a word there missing. A few weeks ago, I woke to his rattles going around my bed 2 times. What is this phenomenon for or about? How am I to use or look at it?
Well, I would look at it as a spiritual encounter, a mystical experience. I wouldn't call that, it's not the same as a Kundalini experience or even a spiritual awakening. Many people do have mystical experiences. I would say that sometimes they're part of the mystery. We can't, how can we say? We can say we might be experiencing somebody on another dimension. We might be experiencing a guide that's important. We might be having an experience that's showing us some new direction we need to take, that we need to, that there's something in this for us. Let's look into it. Let's see what it has to offer us. Some people would say that if you were in a particular lineage in a previous life, that lineage holder may be showing up. So in your case, perhaps you have had a lifetime or a connection in some way to a Native American lineage. And it would be worth exploring because that was a very powerful experience. And I think these are gifts. They're unpredictable. Not everybody gets them. But I think there's other kinds of dimensional, maybe archetypal types of phenomena that come to our psyches, just like a dream you can have a dream of that sort. And it's sometimes useful to talk to the entity, maybe write to it or draw it or explore it. I've met a number of people who've had a guru or someone like that show up and years later ran into the person, saw a picture of them and went and found them. Several people have talked that way about Ramana, about Yogananda, and Native Americans show up periodically in people's psyches. So it's a great gift and explore it. Just see what it has to offer you. Don't bother worrying about labeling it too much, so much as that this came to you from the depths, and discover why. What does it have to teach you?
Okay. And we have one here from Rosemary. Can you contact deceased loved ones when you experience Kundalini? Have you known people with physical disabilities to experience Kundalini?
Good question. I think that sometimes some people, not everybody, and with or without Kundalini, have experiences of visitations from deceased loved ones, or even deceased people they don't even know. Some people have I don't know, maybe a channel open to that dimension of experience. They may or they may not like it. Some don't want it. I saw a Gallup poll once years ago that said something like 60% of widows and widowers feel they've had a connection with their deceased partner. So I don't think it's related particularly to Kundalini. I think that that somebody that's very prone to that, let's say they've always been kind of psychically open, often does move into a Kundalini experience later in their life. A number of people have called me, have had that history. And I think that some people trigger the opening of that brain center or that part of consciousness within their Kundalini process. But I don't think it's not something you can, as far as I know, it's not something you can bring on deliberately. But there may be exceptions, people that work directly with the mind and developing psychic abilities. Perhaps they would have more to say about that.
Okay. And the second part of that was about people with physical disabilities experiencing a Kundalini. And I wanted to, what came to my mind was it's so hard for somebody who's keenly aware of their presence to even express what's going on. So somebody with a developmental delay or physical disability, how do they express it? Have you heard of any?
Well, I'm trying to think. I've had people with illnesses like lupus and other things who've called me with the Kundalini process. I've had people who had metal plates that are in a Kundalini process. Let me say one other thing. You do not have to have a radical Kundalini process to experience enlightenment. That seems to be true in the literature of, certainly in the Zen literature, where sometimes people who are dying, just by going very profoundly and deeply into the nature of consciousness, experience self-realization. In fact, there's a lovely book called The Grace of Dying that a woman who's a hospice worker and a Buddhist and who says that many patients, if they're allowed, will go into realization during the last stages of their life if they're not distracted by a lot of other issues, and if they're open to it. So I don't think the state of your health is a huge issue, but I do think if you had a lot of crippling disability, the energy might be extremely difficult to deal with. And you wouldn't want to do practices specifically to open it up. And, you know, I kind of learned that very early on. I had a woman in my early days who wrote to me, who was in a wheelchair. I think she had had polio, and she lived on the 6th floor of an apartment building in New York. And some yogi had come to visit her mother and given her a transmission that activated Kundalini. And what she was experiencing was seeing demonic entities outside her 6th floor windows. And she was very, very distressed. And then she had tried over and over to get a hold of this organization that this yogi had come from to get some help, and nobody would help her. And so I think that it probably functions better if your body is in good health, but it doesn't mean that you can't become awakened spiritually. And just focus on love, focus on the heart, focus on consciousness itself, or devotion. And you may not have this radical energy moving up from the base, but it's okay. Many people have those experiences. I think Kundalini always opens at some level, but I think sometimes it's very gentle. And for people who do a lot of energy practices and very intense people, they often have, and if they have a lot of trauma in their history, they're often going to have more difficulty with the whole process. But I'm perfectly happy. Any of you that are listeners that can counter with your own experience who might be disabled, I'd love to hear, have you write me and tell me what your experience has been, if it's been a positive experience, especially, or a healing experience. I had one man in India write and tell me Kundalini had solved his diabetes, but more often than not, it seems to bring up latent illnesses that have to be resolved too. And I don't see it. I'm not getting a lot of people telling me they're being healed of physical illness. And all the great masters, several of them, Yogananda, Ramana, others have died of cancer. So it doesn't prevent you from having ordinary physiological ailments.
Okay. Now, this was very early, just as you were beginning to speak, but there was a question and it was sort of your introductory question, what is the phenomena you speak of? And of course, I kept hearing Kundalini awakenings. And you gave a definition toward the end that really grasped my attention, and that's the direct path to enlightenment. So when she asked that question, what is the phenomena you speak of? I think maybe she was asking more about the energy. Could you address that?
Yeah, let me correct you too, Linda. I did not mean that Kundalini is the direct path. Kundalini is actually the gradual path. Okay. The direct path is what Ramana Maharshi teaches, the self-inquiry, and what I was speaking about in terms of focusing on the cave of the heart. That's called the direct path. Kundalini is a very long path. It's a gradual path that can go on for years. So rephrase that last part of your question.
Well, the question that she asked is, what is the phenomena that you're speaking of?
The phenomena is the rising of the intensifying of the life force in your body, the natural energy flow in your body. We're energy beings. It's the intensification and that rising from the base of the spine and through the body, bringing about an encounter with all of your conditioning and all of your patterns and all of your belief systems, and bringing about tremendous change in your perception ultimately of who you are and what you are.
Okay. From Sarah, could you please address Kundalini awakening when it occurs in a child?
Well, I think a child can have consciousness movements, but I really don't. I believe that the ordinary belief is you wouldn't have a Kundalini awakening until you'd gone through puberty. But some children do have mystical experiences they have actually a number of people who have Kundalini awakenings later report profound openings when they were children, just recognizing themselves to be one with the universe, or some of them have encounters with spirit beings, and they don't realize at first that everybody doesn't have those experiences, and they're quite surprised when they get older and find out their experiences are not normal. I had a client once who was disabled. He was disabled in that he had been in mental hospitals a lot. He wasn't one of my Kundalini clients. He was a client when I was working in a rehab facility years before. And he told me that when he was 6, he had fallen off a footstool and cracked his head open. And during that time, he had seen Jesus. He had had an experience with Jesus. But when he came back to consciousness and told his family, they told him he was crazy. And he ended up in institutions almost all of his adolescence, and therefore began identifying with the being schizophrenic, and yet he was really quite brilliant, and he had just a very limited life, unfortunately, because of all that conditioning being so off base. In my opinion, there might have been other factors, but I just thought that was really a sad situation. So yeah, it would really be, listen if your children have those kind of experiences. But I wouldn't expect I would be surprised. I haven't had anybody call me with a young child who had Kundalini, the serious Kundalini activation. There's other reasons, of course, that we can have energy moving. For example, just the fact that you're under a lot of stress, and if you have a shock, your body's going to shake out that energy, right? That's not Kundalini, that's just blocked energy releasing. So you can certainly see that in a child that's having a temper tantrum, or has just maybe had a shock by being hit by a car or something. But I wouldn't call that Kundalini.
Okay. Then from Wendy Rose, we have you worked with clients who recall significant Kundalini awakenings / work in a past life or lives?
People do spontaneously remember past lives in this process. I actually did a lot of work directly with past lives too. And I would say in my direct work doing a past life, I remembered a past life in a kind of primitive village with a ritual that activated Kundalini, shamanic kind of practice. But normally, if they do remember, they might remember spiritual past lives. I don't often hear talk about the Kundalini so much as expansions of consciousness, or being some kind of a spiritual leader in some way, ritual, a monk, something like that. That's more common. It may just be that the body memory is not so much in a past life too, where the consciousness is, but I'm not sure. It's possible.
Okay. This is one I had a question that came up for myself. Can the Kundalini energy release help with healing other body illnesses or ailments?
It's unpredictable. I think sometimes it can, but like I said, many great spiritual masters have died. Yogananda had diabetes, and he died in his 50s. So, I mean, that may have been his choice. We can frame it that way, but the body has its own agenda. You know, I think some people have done healing, have had healings, have been healed, but I wouldn't say that it was something you should automatically expect just because you have active Kundalini.
Okay. Question from Emma. How many people now alive on the planet have truly stabilized in full Kundalini awakening? I'd love to hear your intuitive sense whether in numbers or percentages of the human population?
I would guess it's very, very small. First of all, if they fully stabilize, they haven't called me. So I hear about the people that are having difficulties. So the ones that are doing great, they don't give me a call and say, "Oh, I just want you to know I'm doing great." You know, I think there's probably oh gosh, I don't know, certainly probably not 1%, not even a quarter of a percent probably. I think that there's there's probably maybe 5% that are in process. Um, a lot of people that wake up Kundalini or they have massive, wonderful spiritual experiences are very content to be where they are. They're not, you know, the seeker kind of goes away, and very often you kind of come in and out. So you and people who are enlightened often do not say, even the Dalai Lama will not say he's enlightened. Um, so it's a hard population to get a handle on. And I think there's just degrees. And it might even be the ones that are most enlightened are the ones that never speak up. And so you never know who they are and you never find them, and they're not teaching and they're just enjoying beingness. Or doing some service. Most people who wake up to a certain degree want to do some kind of service, or they sometimes become extremely creative. We've seen some amazing creative art and music from people who, you know, I think there's just degrees. And that a stabilized awakening is a wonderful potentiality, but not a universal endpoint. There's many other wonderful places to be in this process, where your life is transformed, you're doing good works, you are content inside of yourself, you have no powers, or if you do, you're not going to bother, you don't care. And you still fall into your human challenges occasionally. You're not completely free of identification with the body, if we use that as a marker.
All right. I feel the need to share a testimonial given to you from Brian Sackett.
Oh,
He states,
Brian, I know Brian.
Lovely to see you again, Bonnie. I just want to give a testimonial of gratitude. Since meeting Bonnie in 1990, she has had a profound transformative effect in my life in many synchronistic ways. So much love and appreciation to you.
Thank you, Brian. It's lovely to know you're here.
Okay. Comment. Okay, so this is from Candida. I am looking for a therapist to help me work with some of my past and current activations. Where can I find a good directory of such therapists?
I don't know. I would say if you're having some problems, sometimes the Spiritual Emergence Network has some referrals. I don't think it's easy to find. I'm frankly been trying to get, if you're such a therapist, let me know, because I'm trying to create a list. I've been trying to train a few people. Most therapists are not going to deal directly with Kundalini. They might support it or understand it, especially if they're spiritual practitioners themselves. There's some schools of therapy that function better with it, like I believe that somatic therapies often work with the body, and those therapists often have either had a Kundalini experience or are comfortable with it, with your energy releasing in a session. So I would start by looking for somatic therapists in your area. I don't have I just do not have a master list. As I said on my new newsletter, I am putting some resources. They're people that I've worked with directly, that I've trained, or their organizations. There's a new organization of experiencers called Assist, ACISTE.org. And they're trying to set up a function where there's almost like an AA organization for people who've had Kundalini awakenings or spiritual awakenings, so that there can be peer counseling and support. So sorry, I don't have a master list for you.
Okay. This next question had a comment before it, so I'm going to read the comment, then the question. And this is from Wendy. It says, Tom Kenyon shared a great description of his Kundalini awakening in his documentary, Song of the New Earth. He was in college and so overheated, he had to spend time in the infirmary to cool the body. So the question is, do you consider opening our Kundalini a part of raising our vibration to 5D, the fifth spiritual dimension and higher?
I don't language it that way at all. I just consider it a potential of every human and a transformative process. I don't think in terms of reaching other dimensions. I think more in terms of finding profound peace and presence within yourself as more of the final goal, finding yourself as knowing yourself to be the consciousness that all of us share, and being at peace with the transitions between life and death because of that, and having the heart open, and also maybe being in alignment with however the universe wants to use you. So I know there are systems, though, that their whole model has to do with various dimensions of experience, but it's just not been my approach or my personal practice.
Okay. This is from Jessica. Hello, Bonnie. Thank you for your wonderful talk. What is the difference, in your opinion, between full-blown spiritual or Kundalini awakening and enlightenment?
Kind of what I just said. I think Kundalini awakening, I don't think, is enlightenment. It's the energetic response to the changes in consciousness that lead to enlightenment. So it's your body clearing out and making changes. And I think that as the Kundalini moves through the crown, one goes into samadhi, can go into samadhi states and satori states, which are unitive conscious states. And those are still states. They're beautiful, they're wonderful teachings, they're ecstatic. And I don't think that's quite enlightenment. I think it's, there's two stages of samadhi, and I think that's the Nirvikalpa samadhi. There's another stage which has to do with a much quieter way of just living, where awakeness comes down into the body and one lives from an awakened state, from an awakened presence, without being disturbed by the challenges that come up in a human experience, because you're not really seeing this life as, it's more like a dream. It's often called, that's often reported as more of a dream. It's more of a creation of mind, and you're not as anxious about it. And I think that as far as I can tell anyway, the Sarvakalpa, the ultimate samadhi, is more of a relaxation into just being and living as beingness. And it's easy, I think it's very easy for people to get very attached to samadhi states. People that are really good meditators know, I did that for years. I knew I could go sit down in my den and close my eyes and just be gone for a couple hours, and how blissful that was. It was amazing. But and so you can kind of get addicted to that, especially if you've got issues in your life that need to be dealt with, because it's a lot more fun to be just out of your life. But I think at some point, instead of going somewhere, see, in that situation, you feel like your consciousness is going somewhere. And then, but there's another level of awakening where it feels like your the consciousness you are is everything's consciousness of everything. And it's right here, and there's no problem with right here either. And that's kind of Eckhart Tolle's position, you know, be here now. It's here now. It's all that's here. It's the only thing that's here. So it's lived rather than it's not where you go, it's who you are. And for me personally, and I would have to say I've been profoundly influenced by the teachings of Adyashanti, and that's how I have come to see, I don't know, I think of it more as living awakened than I do of enlightenment, but that's how I see awakening. People have so many definitions for enlightenment, so many ideas of what it is.
Okay, I'm going to give a status report. We're within 10 minutes of the hour. I have 43 more questions. And so we might need to go over just a little bit. Well, comments or questions. A lot of these are comments.
There was a comment, and it's moved past now, that I'd love to have you read, or I could read it if I can find it. That was just beautiful about somebody who had a physical disability and also a Kundalini awakening, which is a counter to what I was talking about.
Yeah, I didn't mean to pass that. I thought it was.
I think it was Wendy Rose Williams.
Did I miss that one?
Here it is. Regarding physical disabilities and Kundalini rising, I have severe scoliosis and a fully fused spine with a 14-inch metal rod implant. I was fully able to open my Kundalini in 2013 via Tom Kenyon's Magdalene meditation. The energy was able to rise chakra by chakra and blow out the top of my crown to allow me to merge fully with the light universal consciousness. Had a tremendously sore back, but only for 3 days. Kept asking my higher self and guides to heal my body and was fortunate with the amazing results. That's just great. And I'm so glad to hear that. It answered the question that I really couldn't answer. So in this Tom Kenyon's meditation, that might be a good path for somebody else to explore if it's that effective. I'm not familiar with it myself. I try not to teach about things that I haven't done myself, but there's a good reference for you.
Yeah, and I missed that somehow. Okay, I had another question from Jane. Please outline the 5 types of prana.
Oh gosh. Well, I can just do it roughly. I don't have it all in all the technicalities in my head. One is there's one for things that rise, so like throwing up, and there's one that they're related to different things. One circulates with the heart. One is about elimination, so that takes care of that part of the body. One is about rising up. One is the overall body circulation, and there's, if you get any good basic yogic book that talks about the pranas, they should have a model with pictures and show you all of these. Basically, the pranas, the 5 pranas, are energy flows that explain everything your body does, from coughing, sneezing, blinking, the heart circulating without you having to do anything about it, the heart beating, using the bathroom, all of that's explained through the movement of these pranas. I would recommend you look for a basic yoga manual that talks about the energy field of yoga.
Okay. Another one, this is a broad area to address, but this is from Amy, and she says, I'm confused about something basic about meditation. Often it seems to involve sustained, directed focus on using the imagination to direct awareness of energy. In other words, doing something. But it also seems that the goal is to stop doing anything and just allow oneself to be. Can you address this apparent contradiction?
Well, there's many forms of meditation, and it's well worth trying different ones and seeing what works for you. Like some people will concentrate on the third eye or a mantra. If they do that a lot, they might end up with a lot of headaches and problems. So then they shouldn't be doing that one. They should try something else. In the Tibetan tradition, there's these elaborate visualizations that you think would just blow your mind. I can't even imagine doing them myself, but they do have a function in that lineage. Also, some people focus on a word. Christian meditation and centering prayer is really quite effective. It's quite a bit like Zen, where you take a word like love or Jesus, or it can be just peace, and you focus on just that word and you let it drop down into your heart. You just become one. Concentration is almost always an aspect of meditation. But the non-dual forms of meditation are much more about just letting everything be, being still, discovering the stillness that's already in you. So you just sit and you just, for me anyway, I would say, I always tell people when they meditate, the first thing you should do is ground yourself in your chair, feel your feet on the floor, feel your butt on the chair, recognize you're a body being supported here. And then just let go and bring awareness down either into the heart or into the third chakra area. And just don't concentrate, just kind of tune in, just be present with being there, beingness, stillness, Adyashanti might call it, the quietness, the stillness that's already there. He has a poetry book called My Secret is Stillness. It's like listening to your own center of stillness, of presence, of just relaxing into that. So that's a non-doing ultimately, because you just kind of, once the mind quiets down a little bit, you just, well, I'm going to use another word that I found very important, which is simply awareness, just awareness. Often when I lead a meditation, I'll ask people to tune into their awareness and how the awareness moves. Like you can be aware of your thoughts, you can be aware of your feelings, you can be aware of the air on your skin, you're aware of my voice. To tune into that, what's that awareness? What is that awareness? Where is that? Tune into awareness itself and see what it's like to just be that. When it's not aware of anything, you're trying to tune into, what is this? Because awareness is really your clue. It's your pathway into the pure consciousness. There's a nice book by Locke Kelly. He's written a couple of books about practicing awareness in everyday life. Just kind of like, you don't have to even just be sitting in meditation. Just little practices he's come up with that are really based on ancient Buddhist practices, but he's westernized them so they're very simple and clear. And that you can just do to tune into that quality of being awareness. To me, that awareing is what brings you home ultimately. So I would just say, depending on how long you've meditated, what you've done, Adyashanti has a lovely thing on his website called True Meditation, which is a description of how he teaches it, which is, he comes out of the Zen tradition. It's a very simple, just being present form of meditation that you could check out. So you have to find what feels really nurturing for you. But I really think the less efforting, the better, and ultimately. But sometimes at the beginning, you do need effort because your mind wants to do a lot of other things.
I can definitely understand that comment. The mind wants to do other things. Monkey mind, that's me. So we're going to go on about another 10 or 15 minutes with a few more questions, and then we'll bring the recording to an end. So this next one is a comment and question from Ramonda. I have been, I have having needle pricking like feelings. I have discussed this with Yvonne last time, and she advised me to be consistent with my prayers. I am doing that. Lately, I'm having this experience that somebody is around me. I really feel that presence, but not sure what should I do next. I am not scared. Sometimes I do have choking feelings that I really have to cough very hard to release that choking feeling. Please provide guidance.
Well, it's hard because usually when I do an assessment, I get a whole lot of background information and then I can more easily pinpoint why somebody's having an issue. But it sounds like, as I was saying earlier, there's some contractions in the throat. And I would suggest humming, singing, making sounds, stretching the neck. If you're in a practice, if you're meditating at the time and it becomes uncomfortable, shift awareness to another area of the body. Generally, the heart's the best place to go if you can. So, because like if you're starting to have a symptom, sometimes all your attention goes there and then that amplifies it. So energy will usually follow awareness. So just bring energy down into the heart and maybe breathe down into the belly and see what happens. If it gets really uncomfortable, stand up and walk around, sing, see what the throat wants to release. It's okay to cough, but sometimes other sounds are more pleasant for you. And I think the same of if there's a sense that somebody's with you and you don't know who it is, don't worry about it. There's just a sense that somebody's with you. It's like, you don't have to be doing anything. You're just being aware. I'm aware there's a sense of energy. Maybe somebody else wants to be meditating with you. Maybe it's an illusion. Maybe it's your cat, who knows? You know, you're not going to always know. We're dealing with mystery here. And the mind wants things to be pinned down. But we really, the more you can just be curious and say, oh, okay, well, maybe this is good, who knows? If it's uncomfortable though, if it's negative, feel free to get up and walk outside in the sun and shift the energy field and turn the light on or whatever you need to do. But if it's not, just, okay, this can happen. These things happen. Didn't know that.
Okay, yeah. Okay, next one's from Kathy. What is the connection with Kundalini and twin flames?
I don't know. I don't work with twin flames. I would say that somebody else who has an active Kundalini can certainly stimulate you. There can be a transmission, even if they don't intend it. But I don't know necessarily that a twin flame would be that person. It might be somebody you never even know that would have the energy activated. So that's just not a system that I've studied at all. And I try to have as few beliefs as possible. I use the models, but I try not to pin myself down to a belief. That more I want to look at it as, let's say if I thought that I had a twin flame, I would say what an intriguing mystery. And if I have a memory of being together in another life, well, that's why I feel special about this person. It would just be, that's as far as I would go with it. I wouldn't try to turn it into a whole structure for myself. I know for some people that is meaningful for them. So I'm not saying it shouldn't be. I'm just saying it hasn't been my path.
Okay, thank you. And from Louisa, she says, thanks, Bonnie. Can you say something about ancestral and intergenerational traumas coming up with Kundalini? Are they related to a particular chakra releasing? Also, anything you can say about Kundalini and walking a shamanic path?
Oh, well, those are kind of different questions. I think that a lot of people who've had a trauma, And I think most trauma is ancestral in the sense that if your parents were abusive to you, their parents were likely abusive to them. It's been passed down generationally. That trauma that is not healed, it often gets passed down. Self-hatred that isn't resolved often gets projected on one of the children, if not all of them. And many people who have spiritual awakenings have trauma, serious sexual or physical trauma in their histories. And it's extremely challenging for them because those memories will come up. So if it's sexual trauma, it's gonna come up in the second chakra area. Sometimes the energy can feel invasive and re-traumatize because it's an invasive energy and you don't know what it is. And your initial trauma was invasive. Sometimes it's in the third chakra because that's where all these beliefs about whether or not I'm good or okay come from, and that's been inherited. I often tell people if they are working through and healing a trauma, they are doing it for their lineage, that it isn't just for them, that they're breaking a lineage that will no longer be in the mind stream, that will be free. It'll free that planet from that particular lineage. It'll free the human condition from that lineage. So, that's why it's a huge challenge for them, but it's also a huge gift they're giving to the collective that needed to happen and somehow is going to happen through them. And that people pass on pain because of pain. And as you know, this planet, there's a lot of people that have had a lot of pain. It's quite clear when you've worked as a therapist with people who've had relatives in the Holocaust, that that pain is there generationally. Somebody once said, I don't remember who, it's been quoted somewhere, that it takes 7 generations to release the conditions of a traumatic thing like that. So all of us that are committed to waking up and to healing ourselves and to facing it and getting that energy out of our fields are doing it for everybody. We're not just doing it for ourselves. It's not just personal. And I know some religions think if you heal it for yourself, you're healing it for those entities along your back line. I know the Mormons believe that. I don't know whether that's another belief system. I don't know whether it's true or not. How could I know that? But I do think that it's a nice thought that we're not just healing it for the future, but we're taking away a strand of terrible suffering that was in the past.
That kind of answers the last question, but just in case you wanted to address it a little more, she asked also anything you can say about Kundalini and walking a shamanic path.
Oh, yeah. I'm not real familiar with shamanism, as some people I know. Emma Bragdon specializes in that. She'll probably speak about that eventually to you guys. But what I've seen is that what my position is, the shamanic path is very challenging, much more dramatic than the normal Kundalini path. You can have really wild visions and challenges. And it's great for people that are adventurous, that don't mind that. But I've had a few people who have called me who have been pulled into shamanism by a friend and who were so shaken by it that they almost lost their ability to function. It just wasn't the right path for them. And I think that particularly now with ayahuasca, a lot of people are using ayahuasca and going to Peru. I've had young people, if you haven't any strong sense of self yet, and you're only 19 or 20, you haven't found a place to function in the world, I think you're taking quite a big risk with ayahuasca because it plunges you into territory that needs a little preparation and needs a strong center to come back and say, okay, I am that, but I'm this person too. I can now go back to school or support myself or whatever I need to do. And I think it's much better for people who've already established themselves a little bit in the world and feel and don't have a real traumatic psychological history on the whole, especially because it's very hard to find good psychological support. So when somebody, I'm thinking of one young man I worked with from that the therapists don't, he's very scattered and frightened, and therapists want to just give him medications, and he's not functioning very well. And I think he was so vulnerable when he did that that he just wasn't prepared. I think I read somewhere one of the Buddhist teachers says you have to have a strong sense of self before it's safe to give it up. And I think that's really a kind of a good foundation. But unfortunately, it's not true today because everything's available to everybody everywhere. And a lot of young people want to take these experiments. It works okay for some of them. But I would recommend caution. But, I'm old fashioned. I'm old. I'm not somebody that I'm rooted in a longer perspective than somebody that's 20 years old. So the world is different today.
Okay. So I do have a question from Denny, and some of this we've covered, but it's a good point to summarize because I'm not sure we're going to get to the 73 new messages, but you're very popular. Okay, so Denny asked, what is known about the characteristics of Kundalini awakening? Are there recordable changes in the electromagnetic field surrounding the body?
That's not a question I can answer. I haven't studied it. I know people who have studied changes in consciousness, not so much Kundalini, but they've studied the brains of lamas and other people that have had spiritual awakenings, and they say that their brains are much more balanced in some ways. And they've studied, I know different people have done different kinds of brain studies, but I don't know of any really electromagnetic studies of somebody while they're running Kundalini energy. I don't know even if there's a machine that captures it. It might capture it, probably, I guess you would be able to see it, but I'm just not familiar with that. My work has been much more on a one-on-one basis than especially in the last 20 years. Before, when I was active at ITP, I was more aware of what was going on in that level of academia, but that was 35 years ago. So things have changed. There might be some great things going on. There's some kind of an organization, let's see, it's called ISEEM, the International Society for the Study of Energy in Medicine. That organization might know if there's some electromagnetic studies of some sort, but I don't know if they talk about Kundalini. They're all scientists and doctors.
Okay. So I'm going to ask my advisor here, Yvonne, how much further do we want to go with our timing?
I think maybe we should take our final question because we have gone 15 minutes over, unless Bonnie particularly wants to keep going longer.
Well, the next one is addressing her field of therapy, so it's a good way to close it out. And this is from Shwarna, and it says, you said to seek therapy to prepare for the Kundalini awakening, but for those of us who cannot afford therapy, do you have any other suggestions?
Well, I don't think everybody needs therapy first, but I think if you've had a lot of trauma, you need to work on your trauma. You need to heal your pain. So I guess I would look for, if you were somebody from an abusive childhood, you might look for, say, if your parents were alcoholic, there's organizations for adult children of alcoholics. there's books on working with the inner child. There's books on journaling, using journaling to heal. You might look for um, groups of some sort that work with healing the inner child. There's so much on the internet today. I would explore, just start, dropping into Google possible things that you'd be interested in, and just see if something doesn't come up for you intuitively. Keep a journal and begin to write out. If you're meditating, meditation will bring up everything. One of the great Swamis said that. She said that meditation will bring up all the unconscious. And Thomas Keating, who teaches meditation or did, he's passed away, of centering prayer, says centering prayer will bring up all the unconscious. So when things come up in the unconscious, journal about them, write about them. And if you can find somebody else that shares your history a little bit, is willing to talk it through, use that. And look for therapy support organizations that work on a sliding scale. There might be a mental health center where you live that would, you could call and tell them what you want. They may have somebody there. There might be a college that's training therapists, and you could get a student intern that would be a low fee. So those are some possibilities.
Bonnie, I want to thank you for answering a wide range of questions, and you never know what's coming up in the chat. So for those that are still remaining, we'll save those chats and we'll share those with Bonnie. And if needed, she can contact you directly in the future. So at this point, I'm going to turn this over to somebody else.
To Jane.
Jane.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, well, thank you so much, Dr. Bonnie. That was a remarkable presentation, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. You touched on so many topics and shared so much wisdom, so thank you so much. So thank you so much, Robert and Yvonne and Linda, for inviting me to co-host this event. It's such an honor to be associated with this group, and it's a lot of fun. So let me just say a few groups about Hive Mind, a group of like-minded people interested in awakening. And we have all kinds of interesting events. If you'd like to visit us, and go to janesinspiration.com and go to the events and courses tab. You'll see we have different events, shamanic healing and soul retrieval, as well as plant medicine recovery. We work with that too. We also do intuitive training, and we've got a couple classes coming up. Besides the courses, one planting by the moon coming up next month, using the lunar cycles as our ancient ancestors did to plant crops and flowers. And tonight we have a free event, Spring Equinox, where I'll delve into some of the ancient mysteries, which also hint at the Kundalini coil of the snake moving up the caduceus to awakening. So I'll be going into some secrets hidden in plain sight. So thank you so much. And I'm going to turn this over to Robert Baer.
Thank you, Jane. And by the way, I have signed up for your, and I attend those on a regular basis. I would strongly recommend that you check those out. And I want to thank Hive Mind for co-sponsoring this talk. Dr. Bonnie Greenwell, this was absolutely fabulous. You did a great job. If this was a baseball game, I'd say you hit a home run. I want to remind everybody that Spiritual Awakenings International presents online speaker events the third Saturday of each month at no charge, no cost. They are free. And our next speaker, which is Saturday, April 17th, will be Renario Ray Hernandez, who's going to be speaking about a greater reality, the new paradigm of non-local consciousness, the paranormal, and the contact modalities, including UFOs. So if you have anybody that's interested in UFOs and things like that, he is marvelous. You'll really enjoy that talk next month. Also, in May, we're going to have our first responder, police, fire, EMT inaugural event. We're going to have Dr. Richard Kelly present on our behalf to honor the police, fire, and first responders. And that particular event will be co-sponsored by Seattle Ions. And I forgot to mention that Ray Hernandez's one is going to be co-sponsored by South Bay Ions. So just a couple things for your calendar. Please check out our beautiful SAI website. There's a lot of information on STEs there, a lot. If you haven't subscribed yet to Spiritual Awakenings International, please do so to get the announcements. And before I turn this over to Dr. Quezon, I want to say that June 12th and 13th is our first annual conference. It's going to be online, but we have got a tremendous lineup of speakers. Some of our Circle of Honor speakers will be there. Dr. Bruce Grayson, Dr. Yvonne Quezon, Dr. Francis Liu, Joe Tima, Kimberly Clark Sharp, Bill Guggenheim, and we will have speakers from 5 different countries: Canada, England, Mexico, Spain, and the US. We also will be introducing our first Spanish language panel, and we're excited about that. We're having the website translated into Espanol, and that'll be up and running very shortly. And my favorite, we're going to have the inauguration of the brand new NDE Talking Dead panel at our first conference. I think you'll really enjoy that. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Quezon. Thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure to have you here. By the way, the Daniel conference is free. No
Thank
charge.
you, Robert. He just threw in that our conference, like all of our other events, will be free. So I want to also extend my thank you to Dr. Bonnie Greenwell for an absolutely extraordinary talk today on Kundalini Awakening. Thank you, Bonnie. It was wonderful. And so on behalf of all of us here, I'm now going to say goodbye to everyone from all around the world. So I'll say goodbye in 6 different languages until next month. Goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen, adios, buenos tardes, arrivederci, dag, farewell, and ciao. Bye, everyone.